Hello everyone, welcome to chapter 273 on my RLDR Custom Creations YouTube channel. It is the weekly edition and as promised, another basics chapter. So if you want to see which tool we're going to do next, all you need to do is stay tuned. Okay, in today's basics chapter, we're going to talk about the bandsaw. I really view the bandsaw as one of the most useful tools in any shop. In fact, I once did an article when I wrote for the Saskatchewan Woodworker about whether you should buy a bandsaw or a table saw. And the conclusion I came to was if you're working with sheet goods, building cupboards and stuff like that, or cabinets, yes, you need a table saw. But if you're building small projects, little jewelry boxes, little curio things that you're giving for gifts and stuff like that, this is your machine. You need a bandsaw. Now, some of the nice things about the bandsaw is, first of all, I would introduce this saw in the school system at the grade 8 level. Not that the grade 7s couldn't have handled it, but they were just not familiar with the shop at all yet, so I kept them on the scroll saws and some basic hand tools. But anyway, grade 8 came along. They were familiar with the shop, a little more shop savvy, if you know what I mean, and we would introduce them to the bandsaw. Now, the bandsaw, the wonderful thing about the bandsaw is the blade is going in one direction. Okay, on the back side, it's coming up, but when it's cutting, it's always cutting here and the teeth are always going down, provided you put your blade on right. Yeah, you don't want to put it in backwards. That's embarrassing. As a teacher, sometimes though it happened. Every once in a while, I'd get so busy that I'd unflip it and put it in and tension it and away we'd go. And the first guy cutting would say, Mr. Friesen, this thing doesn't work worth a hoot. And the blade was in wrong. But anyway, and all joking aside, the teeth are cutting straight down. With a circular cutting motion, like in a like in a table saw or a sliding compound miter saw, the blade is traveling in a circle. The teeth are going in a circle. And what that can do, especially a table saw, is catch material and fire it at you. It's called kickback, and it's serious. I like the bandsaw because the bandsaw doesn't introduce that problem to you. It's just simply cutting down. So if I have students that forget to control the stock, something comes up and they're completely distracted and they turn and they look. Even without turning the saw, if this blade's just going to go down, it's not going to throw anything back. I wouldn't recommend letting go of a piece while you're cutting it. That's not good form or safety. But the bandsaw won't make you pay right away. It's a very forgiving tool that way. Now, yes, it's still a little cut your fingers and stuff like that. I would tell students when they went to the store and they were waiting for their pork chops to get cut, what kind of saw was the guy cutting the pork chops using? A bandsaw. So yes, push sticks and all those things are still very important here. And the technique that I use with this saw is identical to the technique I use on the table saw because I use this as a way to teach that. This is a forgiving way of teaching table saw control. So it's a good way to use the bandsaw, but it's also a good way to use a table saw. So anyway, this is one of my favorite saws. In fact, I have two of them in my own personal shop. One for cutting rip and cross cut is what we're going to do today. And then maybe in some future date, I'll show you a little bit about resawing, which is also something that you should only really be doing on a bandsaw, in my opinion. Okay? So, but let's start with a little bit of a tour. Excuse me. Now, I have the camera set up this way. I'm going to show you the back of the saw first, what you can see of the back of the saw. So the first thing here is the tensioning hand wheel. So I'll bring you around to this side and show you, but basically what a bandsaw is, it's two wheels, actually with tires on them, so it's the automobile analogy works quite well. But this allows you to tighten the blade to the right tension. Now, everybody's got a little bit of a different idea of how much that should be. But I was using Viking, a blade that Lee Valley sold. I used to use them. Now I buy the cheapest blades I can because they basically last as well with students as the more expensive blades. So I don't spend a lot of money on bandsaw blades anymore. So getting it to the right tension, basically, you know, when you can do it by strumming it, you can watch it vibrate, and there's a procedure on the blade cover for the Lee Valley blade that tells you how to do that. I just kind of do it by eye and by feel, and when I'm cutting with it, I adjust it till it cuts the way I want it to. I guess that's the easiest way to say it. But if you have a rule that you use and it's working for you, just go right ahead and use it. There's a lot of debate on what should happen. The other control that you want to be aware of here is this knob here. And this adjusts the wheel. Okay, we're looking at the saw this way. This adjusts the wheel, the bottom this way. So that way you can track your blade. This is blade tracking. Now, I did a video quite a while ago, and it didn't really get a lot of views. I was very frustrated with the way people were tracking their blades because they would work in an adult shop. It's no problem. You can set your fence to the angle the blade is cutting at, to the drift, and you can rip to your heart's delight. But when you're in middle years and you want to use it to cross-cut a piece with a miter gauge and you're setting drift, you can't do that. It doesn't cut properly. So I needed my blade to cut parallel to the slot. Now I have a way of adjusting the tracking that works for me, but that has, I think, fallen out of favor, and I'm not sure why, because I don't see people showing that technique on the internet anymore. But to me, it works great. Yeah, sometimes when I get into a bit of a hurry, I don't do it quite the way I should, and I have a little bit of an issue. But 99 times out of 100, setting it the way I've been setting it works really good. But this isn't a video for that. So you've got two controls, the blade tension and the tracking on the back of the saw. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring you around to the front of the saw, and we're going to look at things, and then we're going to get on to the cutting. Okay, I'll be back in a bit. Okay, well, we flipped around to the other side of the saw. So we were at the back of the saw, now we're at the front. This is where the operator would be standing. So remember what I said on all the previous tools, or the two previous tools we've done, that PPE needs to be on the tool. I believe that very firmly. So I've got push sticks here, got my little magnets underneath them so that they stick on. I don't have to drill any holes in new equipment. I've got a face shield here. And with this saw in grade 8, my students wore a face shield. I'm, again, not using it today because I'm teaching, so I need to be talking. So anyway, that's basically the PPE that I would use on this tool. Now remember, there's hearing protection, and there should be some type of dust collection. Now I'm in the middle of working on that. We're going to get there. I need to have dust collection to the bandsaws up and running for when I start teaching this fall. So I'm going to get forced into working on it fairly soon. But anyway, I have these magnetic hooks that actually work pretty good. And this one holds the miter gauge, and I should have another one here that holds the fence. I must have moved it. Okay, well, we'll talk about that later. Excuse me. All right, so first of all, you have the on-off switch. And the bandsaw should have a mag start on it, because in a school situation, you don't want the tool running when the power comes back on, or you have a bit of a crisis. This way, when the power goes out, when power is disconnected to this saw, the switch goes out, and you need to hit the switch again to start it. That's important. All right. I have rules posted on all my stuff, and again, you can go to teacherpayteacher.com and buy that if you want to support my videos with the content that I've already written. So you can do that. All right. So the bandsaw essentially is a wheel. Now this is aluminum. It's got a rubber tire on it, and the tire has crown on it. Okay, they're not flat. These tires have crown on them, and that's important. Okay, I'm going to show you the bottom here, if I can get it open. Things are always stubborn when you're trying to shoot a video. Okay, so there's a wheel on the bottom. Now this is the driven wheel. So there's a pulley system that connects this to the motor at the back. I have a back outfeed table on here, and it's supported by a toolbox. So you can't see the motor on this saw, but it's at the back. And the wheel simply turns. The motor spins and the blade goes in one direction. It's not like the scroll saw that goes back and forth. This just goes one direction. That's why I like this saw, and I think that's what makes it really safe. So, okay, so you've got the wheels, you've got the rubber tire, you got the blade. This guard protects the blade when it goes up and back to the top wheel. That's important. Let's close this now. You've got the fence here, which is very important on a bandsaw. This one I made, and I always set it so that I don't set for drift anymore. I haven't set a bandsaw to accommodate, or a fence to accommodate blade drift in 30 years. So there's a better way to do it, and I have a video out already, but maybe I'll do another one later on. But there's a better way to do this. The other thing that you need is a miter gauge. This is really important because we're going to use this miter gauge just like at the table saw to make our cross cuts. Remember, a cross cut is cutting across the grain, cutting to length. All right, so I'm just going to leave it there for now, but it should always get hung up where it goes. The other thing here is, and this is maybe more for your teacher than for you, having the bearing assembly or whatever guides you use for the blade, having them set correctly. Okay, the side support, the gullet of the tooth, like the back part of the tooth, the hollow part, should be about even with that, maybe slightly ahead. There's a little bit of debate on this as well, but I would say keeping the teeth away from the cut. No, sorry. The teeth away from the bearings. So back enough that the teeth aren't interacting with the bearings, and not so far back that the blade can do all kinds of crazy things. Okay, so just maybe line it up even with the gullet. That would do it. Okay, so the other one is the bearing that prevents the blade from being pushed too far back. A lot of people set this with currency. Like if you have in Canada it would have to be a $5 bill because we don't have ones and twos anymore. We have coins, and they're a little bit too thick for this. So you just want a wee little bit of clearance. I never bother getting anything to measure it with. I just eye it because I've done this for a long time. But anyway, that's important that that's set right. And the bottom as well. There's another assembly like this underneath here that I haven't shown you yet. Now, the other thing that can happen with this thing, and we didn't do it very much at school, this table tilts. But you can see I've got all kinds of extra real estate on here. This doesn't tip well anymore. In fact, I've kind of made extra reinforcements on this saw so that it stays at 90 degrees, because that's what we want to cut most of the time. There are times I've made it, bevel, but often for that, I'd rather build a simple jig for a bevel than change a saw. It depends on what you're doing. I mean, if you just have this table here, your saw is still new, you haven't added anything to it, by all means, tip it. That's fine. It'll work. It'll work just fine. All right. And yeah, I said there's another. I can't get the camera under there, but there's another set of guide bushings and thrust bearings. That's what the back one's called, the thrust bearing. Another set like this underneath the table. So make sure that they're set the same. All right. Okay. So well, I think we've covered just about everything. Dust collection is also very important, but if you're working in a school situation, I would think that's covered for you. So again, we're not going to belabor this too long, but knowing the parts and everything, how this saw works is kind of important for when you're using it. So, and now we've covered that. So let's move on to making a rip cut. All right, we're ready to make a rip cut. Now, a rip cut, just a reminder, is cutting things to width. So we're going to cut down here like this, and that's a rip cut. We're cutting with the grain. And you'll notice that the piece I have in my hand is rough. Now, we would never take this to the table saw. In fact, to any other saw in the shop without first planing an edge and jointing a face. That's minimal, okay? But the bandsaw, because of the way the blade functions, is a great tool for knocking down your rough stock. The only limitation to it is on the left side of the blade, when you're facing the saw, you only have 14 inches because this is a 14-inch saw. In fact, to the riser kit here, I only have about 12 3/4. So pieces that are wider than 12 3/4 need to come out to this side of the blade. We're going to talk about that in a bit. So in fact, maybe we should just talk about that now. So when you're cutting with this saw, so if you're cutting a 4-inch cut like it's roughly set here, and it's on this, your fence is on the left side of the blade, then you would take your push sticks and you would stand on the right side of the blade. If you're cutting a larger piece, anything over 12 3/4, and you have to move it to this side, then you would stand, oops, sorry, I got junk on the floor here. You would stand on the left side of the blade, because even though this won't throw anything back on you, remember, we're using this as a way as a bridge to get you to the table saw. So you may as well learn never to stand directly behind the cutting action. May as well learn it. Okay, so anyway, that's cutting on with the fence on the different side. Whenever possible, I prefer the fence on the left side because I'm more this way. It doesn't matter to me. I can do this with either hand, and you should learn to do that too. Now, the one thing I don't like about the way I have this saw set up, and it's not as beneficial having a tape measure on the fence rail as it is on the table saw, because the table saw, the blade doesn't change side to side. Whereas here, you can get little bits of movement. And if you're using your bandsaw for precision work, which you should consider doing because it can do it, I never used the measurements on the rail. What I would do, and there's two ways of doing this. One is putting your tape measure, and if you do it like that, you'll notice I set for 3 inches, but my hand is at the 10-inch mark. So my hand is well away from the blade. So if there's an accidental startup, yeah, you're gonna lose a tape, but hey, that's minor. Rather a tape than fingers. So that works good, you can work, but make sure, I don't like seeing students do stuff like this, holding it, say, at the 3.5 mark to measure 3 inches. That gets you way too close to the blade, and that is a problem. So what I would often do, especially at my grade 8 and 9 levels, because we tended to work on similar projects. Now, I gave them a choice of about 5 or 6 different projects that they could choose, and I made jigs for all of them. So let's say we needed to make a front piece. This is a drawer jig, sorry, but it's the same thing. So you put the jig in there and you set it and then you log it. And then everything's the same. No missed measurements, no screw ups, nothing. It's all good. So we've got it set. Can I use that measurement here? Yes, I can. Okay. The other thing you want to be aware of before you start the cut, and this is something that if you're cutting 3/4 inch stock all the time, like this is rough, so it's about 1. So if you're cutting stock like this, you should really set the upper guide so that it's about, I like it about 1/4 to 3/8 above the stock. So to do that, and I don't really encourage this, but sometimes when I'm working, I just put my pinky underneath there and then that's it. But I would say that if you're working with students, and I did this at school as well, and I just forgot to put it with this, you should have a little gauge, just a little gauge, piece of wood that they can slide in and get that right. Now, if you're all cutting legs that day, you can set it at the beginning of class and nobody has to touch it, okay? So with that in mind, let's make our rip cut. Okay, so procedures. Push sticks. Palming your push sticks so you can still control your wood and your push sticks. You have them. Okay, the other thing is procedural. So you're going to let the teacher know that you're cutting. That's important. So, hey, Mr. Teacher, I'm going to make a cut. And they look at you and they see your face shield is on, they see your push sticks in their hands, and your wood ready to go, the fence is set, and they say, go ahead. Okay, so let's make this cut. We're going to start the machine. Now I switch. And I let this stick go behind the blade. Okay, we're going to do that again with the saw off because there are some things that I need to explain. I'm just going to put that there. All right, so you saw what I did. I got permission, I started the saw, and I started cutting. But I controlled, I hope you can see that in the video, I controlled this end with my hand initially because putting your push sticks on like this, that's just not going to work. So you need your hand in here, but put your push stick along the edge of the board, and that actually does 2 things for you, because it'll tell you when you should start using that push stick in your left hand. So you're going to be cutting and cutting and cutting and cutting, and then the wood this push stick hits the fence here. That tells you it's time to change. And the other thing that needs to happen, the push stick in your right hand needs to go behind the blade. So keep pushing like that. Keep this push stick in your right hand about 2 inches past the back of the blade. Okay? Now, why do you need to do that? Okay, let's do this again. If you don't keep this push stick behind the blade, what's going to happen is this piece, when it's cutting, it's going to pivot like that. You see that? And you're going to cut little J's at the end of your cuts. And then you've got to clean that up somehow, waste a bit of wood. So that's why you slide that push stick like that. So notice how your hands are never in any danger. I would encourage you with push sticks, and yes, we will do a video yet, but plasti dip them or paint them where the students' hands go. Because I've had students do things like this, which is a bit unnerving. So make sure that your push sticks are properly set up and you've taught that procedure to your students. That's important. All right, so I think that covers a basic rip cut. Now, again, when you're working with students, I'd make sure that my projects did not have long pieces of wood that they needed to work with, because that increases the difficulty of this quite a bit. Okay, then you need somebody to tail off possibly, and that's a whole other ball game that you need to teach. Maybe a future video. We could do this for years. All right, so let's make a cross cut. Now, I was kind of talking about this before, that a cross cut is something that a lot of people don't do on a bandsaw. So if you're an adult and you're working in the shop, the bandsaw predominantly is for curved cuts and maybe resawing. And resawing, I'll show you another video. That's because it's something all on its own. But if you're working with a grade 8 or 9 student, some people introduce a table saw in grade 9. But in my opinion, if the kids don't get to use the saw, all they get to do is watch you. I don't know, by the time you get to them in grade 10 a year later, I don't know if that really did any good. So maybe getting them to learn to use the bandsaw properly is a better way to go. That's what I did. Your cross cut though, the machine needs to be set properly in order to do this. So with anything that you're making a cross cut on, you take your, oh, look at that. I thought I wasn't prepared again. My pencil's in my pocket. So what you do is you measure, let's say we want to cut this at 16 inches. Make a mark. Just going to leave that there. Just like at the table saw, and this is a little easier to line up because you don't have a blade guard in the way. And then once it's lined up, then get your teacher to take a look. In other words, get his okay to make the cut, his or her okay. And away you go. So we're going to make a cross cut. Okay, permission is given, away we go. Make sure your teeth are back from the blade before you start. You don't want to start a cut with the teeth in the blade or the teeth in the wood, okay? Let's get started. Hold it like this. Okay, wait till the saw stops before you remove the scrap. This piece of wood is worthless. And if you sacrifice one of your fingers to go get it, that's not a good trade. Okay. Now, I'm going to go over hand position again because I made that cut fairly quickly. So what I always do, and I try to put well, you can't. You don't have a choice on the bandsaw because you only have one miter gauge slot, and that's usually on the right-hand side. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen anything with one on the left-hand side. Anyway, so that means my right hand becomes my clamping hand. So if you've got a smaller piece of wood like this or a narrower piece, I can put my thumb in the miter gauge here, hopefully you can see that, and kind of grip it, and I kind of make a fist, or try to, and that clamps the wood to the miter gauge. All right, and then my other hand, my left hand, is the driver. And what that does is that swings my body out of the way of blade alignment, and that is excellent. So anyway, that would be what I would do. I would grip this, it's nice and firm, and then I can watch my cut and I can feed it through. So that is a basic rip and cross cut. Now, if you're going to cut curves on this saw, which it's really good to do with, you don't need the fence or the miter gauge for that. But you do need a simple little lesson, and I'm going to take a different board for that. Okay, you need a lesson in blade depth, okay, from the tip of the tooth to the back of the blade. This is a 1/4 inch blade. Now, in the books, it says it'll cut the diameter of a 1/4. Now, I don't know if the American 1/4 is slightly larger than the Canadian one. I've always found that explanation that, to me, a 1/4 inch blade cutting a circle the size of a 1/4 is a little tight. But there is another way that you can look at this. So when you're cutting your curve, okay, so you're cutting as a circle, but your blade isn't circular, it's straight. So when the back of the blade touches the kerf, the other side of the kerf, when you're turning and that touches, that's where you stop. That's the diameter that blade cuts, because if you turn it any more, you're going to twist the blade. I don't have a way to show that to you. I hope that makes sense. Maybe we'll try to draw it here. Okay, this could be scary, but let's give it a try. So there's your circle. Okay, and you're cutting. And we're gonna draw another circle. The space in between is the kerf. Okay, can you see that? So when you're cutting, when the blade is cutting here and touches that outside, that's as small a circle as you can cut. So watch for that. Teach your students to watch for that, because that's important. If you want to set an arbitrary setting, do that. I would say probably at least 1 inch. You don't want them cutting things too tight. The other thing when you're cutting a curve is tell your students to, if they have to back out of a cut, to turn the saw off when they back out of a curve. Because if they don't, they'll just pull the blade off the wheels. It's happened to me in class a number of times. Well, not really because I taught it, but it does happen. It's happened to me once or twice. Hate to admit it. Okay, so let's make a curve cut. We'll just turn this board around and we'll just kind of do a lazy kind of curve. We'll cut that. There's a lot of overlap with scroll saw skill here, but the one thing you really, really have to watch when you make a cut like this is watch your hand position. You want a good 4 inches between the blade and your hand at all times. Okay, so again, you've explained the cut to your teacher. You've got to his or her go ahead to do it. Let's make this cut. There we go. Well, that wasn't the best cut I've ever done. And a word of caution to you, students don't like doing freehand cuts either, because it takes a bit of doing them to get good at them. So yeah, but they should learn to do a freehand cut as well, but on a bigger board. If you're cutting small stuff, then you really need push sticks, or you need a little jig, or you need something to hold it, because you don't want fingers next to the blade. It's not anywhere, but especially not in a school shop situation. So I think that wraps up everything I need to show you on the bandsaw. If I think of something else I need to show you, we'll do another one. I'll do a resaw one eventually, but I think we're going to get through all the different tools first, because I think that's most helpful to instructors as they start the school year. So again, not getting a lot of views on these videos, but you know what? I don't care. It's important that if you're a shop teacher, that you're confident when you run equipment. And if nobody's ever showed you how to do it, or it was Uncle Bob in the shop, you need to elevate your game a bit, and I'm trying to help you. That's all. So anyway, with that in mind, let's close this off. Well, I hope that helped. I think the bandsaw is one of the nicest tools to use in the shop. And as I said earlier in this video, for some of you retired people out there, I would really question buying a table saw. If you're building kitchen cabinets for yourself, that's different. But if you're just doing, like I said, jewelry boxes, smaller pieces, if you can set your bandsaw blade properly, which is, if I can do it, anybody can do it. That's what I've always told people. And that way, you really don't necessarily need a table saw. This is a really versatile saw to use. So, and the other thing that it does that I think you shouldn't do on a table saw is resaw. And we're going to do a video on that too, but that's a little bit more involved. And to set up a saw to resaw, I actually have a dedicated saw next to this one. It's an older, not that old, but I'd say from the 90s, early 2000s, General International 18-inch wheels with a 3-horse motor, and I run a 3/4-inch blade in there. So that works really good because we make veneers for skateboards and guitar stuff with it. So anyway, with that in mind, that brings the bandsaw video to an end. Like I said, I hope you enjoyed it. If you're interested in the support materials that I've published that could go along with this, go to teacherpayteacher.com. I've been getting some reviews on my stuff lately, and the people that are using it are liking it, and they really like the price because it's dirt cheap. But I am doing this to kind of help out my fellow shop teachers, the ones who are doing industrial arts and they really lack the training to do it confidently. And I'm hoping that I can provide some of that. Yes, you're still going to have to learn on your own. I can't do that for you, but maybe I can start pointing you in the right direction and get your kids going in the right direction as well. So anyway, with that in mind, please like, share, and subscribe. I'd appreciate that. Share this. If you're a shop teacher especially, please share this with your fellow shop teachers. If there's anything else I can do, please leave that in the comments and I will see if I can get to it. And I'm in an unusual situation already. I've already got the weekend edition shot. Wow, I'm getting ahead of the game here. So anyway, please like, share, and subscribe, and share this with others, and make this school year the best that it can be. Make sure the kids have fun in your shop. Okay, take care. See you on the weekend edition.